Video game movies have been a popular yearly occurrence since the 1990s. Adapting video games into movies is a way of these companies drawing attention to the IP to those who might not have picked up a video game before, and also allowing existing fans to experience the franchise in a new way. We've seen this happen with fiction and media all the time, books adapted into films, films adapted into games, and vice versa. Well, despite Sony Interactive Entertainment being one of the biggest video game publishers in the world, they haven't actually adapted that many of their IP to the big screen. Not until very recently, with the formation of PlayStation Productions in 2021. While we wait to see what is next from PlayStation Productions, I thought it would be fun to rank all 6 current PlayStation movies going in release date order. Be sure to drop your rankings down below in the comments because this list is only my opinion, so it'd be great to hear what order you'd place the ones that you've seen. Just a heads up, I am going to use some gameplay footage from the games that these movies are based upon when describing certain scenes from the films. This is purely because of copyright reasons, so don't be alarmed. Also, if you enjoy PlayStation and Sony games as much as I, then be sure to subscribe as I have a lot of content in the works that I think you'll like. The first ever movie based on a PlayStation property released all the way back in 2006, this being Forbidden Siren, based on the PS2 horror game of the same name, specifically its sequel, to which the film's release coincided. Sadly, unlike the games, this film adaptation has never seen a release outside of Japan, but luckily I was able to find a copy of this on Dailymotion, and I have to say I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. Directed by Yukihiko Tsutsumi, he has managed to adapt the setting, themes and allure of the Siren games quite well, incorporating the same enemies, the Shibito, and that rural Japanese feel. The plot centres around a woman who moves to a mysterious island with her father and young child. It weaves its narrative well with the connections to the game and has a powerful twist ending that tackles the human nature of grief and mourning. The set location they had for the film was great as well. It only uses a couple of the same locations, but it has that chilling 90s, early 2000s Japanese horror feel. Growing up with films like Ringu and Ju-on, if you've seen those, then you'll know the vibe with this movie. It made Forbidden Siren feel rather nostalgic to me, even though this was the first time I'd watched it. The soundtrack was also fantastic in this movie. I don't want to spoil too much, as I genuinely do recommend this one if you can find a copy of it. It is only in Japanese, there's no dub version of this out there, but it's still a good watch with subtitles. Overall, I'm going to put Forbidden Siren in the B tier. Some of the acting is a little hit or miss at times, but regardless, this is a solid 2000s Japanese horror film that has a fun story, great twists, and really good adaptations of the game that it's based upon. Sony didn't really experiment with any more movie adaptations for a few years after Siren. That was until an animation studio called Blockade Entertainment partnered with PlayStation to make an animated movie based on the early PlayStation 3 title Heavenly Sword. I really enjoyed Heavenly Sword and wish it received its cancelled sequel. But even I would admit, it felt quite strange to see this IP get an animated movie out of all the other PlayStation IP Blockade could have chosen at the time. Heavenly Sword released in 2007, at a time when the PlayStation 3 wasn't exactly performing the best. So 7 years later, to come out with a movie based on this long-buried IP was certainly a bold move. Does it live up to its original works? Definitely not. This is a very cheaply made movie, and to say it succeeds the game by 7 years is almost insulting. The animation feels stiff and weightless compared to the game's vastly more detailed motion capture animation. The film has a star cast with Thomas Jane and Alfred Molina as King Bohan, replacing Andy Serkis from the original game. But sadly, despite this, none of these performances stand out or are memorable. The film also, despite following the exact same narrative as the game, has to change certain plot points that are not good changes at all. The worst being the introduction of some new brother character called Loki, who the film makes the chosen one instead of it being Nariko, the main character. Loki's inclusion adds absolutely nothing to the story, only belittling Nariko's role. There was probably some kind of like, oh, Nariko will save the day where the man wasn't able to, but the original game was able to tell Nariko's story of being ashamed by her father for being a woman and then sacrificing herself at the end much better than this forced brother character inclusion. Simply put, Heavenly Sword on the PlayStation 3 is far more impressive than this movie, and the original game itself was already like a Hollywood blockbuster action fantasy film. It just didn't need this adaptation. Heavenly Sword, the movie, just adds nothing to the franchise, and even the box art itself is the exact same as the games. It's like they were trying to replace the game, but ended up tripping over its own feet in the process. And now the movie is a dusty trinket that I imagine not many people even know about. I'll place this one in the F tier. 2 years later, Blockade Entertainment was back with another animated adaptation of a PlayStation property, but this time it was Ratchet and Clank. While the animation work was vastly superior to Heavenly Sword, the adaptation wasn't quite as smooth still. Ratchet was really softened in this movie. In the original game, which this is apparently based off, Ratchet was pretty mean and rough and self-centered when we first meet him. The whole point of the first game, which, just to reiterate, this film is supposed to be based off, was to see this very unlikely team-up of Ratchet and Clank go through arguments and disagreements in order for them to bond. Ratchet doesn't agree with most things Clank wants to do. Ratchet isn't a hero and doesn't want to go out and save the galaxy. He just wants to try out cool gadgets and blow stuff up. It's Clank who is the hero. This movie just turns Ratchet from this fairly complex character who ends up doing the right thing because he's forced into the situation, into just some kid who wants to become a hero and join the Galactic Rangers. They turn him into a bootleg Luke Skywalker. And it's just not as fun or as original as a Ratchet and Clank story on the big screen should be. The action is fine, the performances are good, and the animation is fantastic, but the plot and the character development is just so flat and stale. And I imagine for people who have never seen or played the Ratchet and Clank series before, going into this movie for the first time, if they are let down, then that's such a shame because the Ratchet and Clank video games are just not like this movie. It's a real shame because Ratchet & Clank is one of PlayStation's VIP franchises and could do well as an animated series if the creators just had more respect for the original source material. I was going to put this in F, but I think I'll stick it in C because the animation work and getting the original voice actors back for the lead cast is good here. Unfortunately, but not surprisingly, Ratchet & Clank would tank at the box office, with the production studio losing around $5 million on the film. This would lead to PlayStation to cancel adapting any more of its games until 2021, when it formed its own production company, keeping the franchises closer to their own hands. The first movie from this new PlayStation Productions was Uncharted in 2022, starring Tom Holland as the lead, Nathan Drake, and Mark Wahlberg as the side character Victor Sullivan. I've watched Uncharted quite a few times now, and even sticking it on when I've seen it on the TV. Simply put, I think Uncharted is a fine, globe-trotting action movie with silly humour, a high budget, and very low stakes. It doesn't excel beyond any of the video games that it's based upon, but it is still a fun enough ride that captures the franchise's look and feel really well. You've got scenes taking place all over the globe, a mystery for our protagonist to solve, and it tries to incorporate a lot of the similar themes from the games like pirate ships, mercenaries trying to hunt them down, and even remakes the ever iconic scene from Uncharted 3 where Nate has a gunfight whilst falling out the back of a plane. I think the biggest controversy with this film is the casting. I know they describe this as being a kind of like an alternate prequel to the games where the two characters are younger. But while I can buy Tom Holland as a younger Nate, I just cannot see Mark Wahlberg as Victor Sullivan. It's just too miscast for me. I imagine him as being, more matured with a cigar, greyed mustache and floral shirt. But, maybe I could be proven wrong if the film gets a sequel. I'm going to put Uncharted in the B tier, but below Siren, as this was a fun watch, but very by the numbers. The following year we saw Gran Turismo, a 2023 movie that tells the true story of British race car driver Jan Mardenborough, who became a professional racer through his passion for playing Gran Turismo, PlayStation's iconic racing sim series. This isn't a complex movie, it's a simple tale of a boy competing in a tournament, going through a struggle, losing the support of his closest people, but then bringing it back at the end, winning when he doesn't give up on his dreams. But with this being an adaptation of a true story, something that did happen to someone, it definitely gives it more gravitas, and you really come to root for the main character in the movie. While I personally don't have that much interest in racing films, I was hooked to Gran Turismo, mostly due to the excellent performances of its very strong cast. Archie Madekwe is perfect in the lead role, but the standout here for me was David Harbour as Jack Salter, a former racer himself who didn't quite make it to where Jan ends up, but he becomes Jan's trainer for the races, and you can see he has so much passion for this role. It bleeds into every scene that he's in. That being said, David Harbour is just fantastic in everything that I've seen him in anyway. I also want to say how much I love how this film connects to the games. While on a surface level, the story doesn't actually have a ton to do with Gran Turismo besides obviously being the game that Jan plays at the beginning to get into the tournament, but even after the tournament act begins, there's still a lot of clever nods to the games with the sound effects and HUD elements that they apply to the racing. It's really good at keeping the film still feeling like a video game movie without it steering off into being just a generic racing film. Overall, I really enjoy watching this film. Gran Turismo was certainly a big surprise to me, as when I first watched it, I had very low expectations and it blew them out of the water. While not a perfect movie, it's still got great action, drama, character development, emotion, and adapts the game in a very unique and interesting way. I'm going to put Gran Turismo in A tier. The latest PlayStation movie released earlier this year, that being Until Dawn. This was directed by David Sandberg, who has a pretty good track record with his past directorial works, being 2013's horror film Lights Out, Annabelle Creation, and the DCEU Shazam movies. With his history in the horror genre, Until Dawn felt like it was in good hands. But it's an interesting choice to adapt a game that already felt like a movie itself, except with different dialogue paths and a butterfly effect that can lead you down different endings. So if anything, the game already excelled at what any movie could produce with the IP. However, this Until Dawn movie has took the franchise in a new direction and at least has some interesting ideas instead of just trying to retell the plot of the game. There's new characters, a new setting, and a much more different take on the whole we have to survive until dawn scenario. The group of teenage protagonists head to a creepy house in the woods to look for one of the lead's missing sister. Unfortunately, they get trapped in a supernatural loop where they keep getting killed, then a sand timer resets, and they come back to life, albeit scarred from their previous night, and have to live the nightmare again. It's certainly an original take and isn't a bad watch by any means, but it had big shoes to fill to stand side by side with its video game counterpart, and I think it just doesn't quite fill those shoes well enough for me. Where Until Dawn lets itself down is in the way it executes the parts that try to connect to the games too much. It ends up feeling a little tacky, like how the Silent Hill movies just have to cram in Pyramid Head at every chance they get for no good reason. Here there is an opportunity to experiment with some creative ghouls that kill our protagonists. The tagline was, after all, every night a different nightmare. However, all the creative looking ones are thrown together in a quick 5-minute montage halfway through the movie. And the knights we do actually get to see are a boring one about a witch that poisons the mind of one of the protagonists, and the others are just the same slasher villain dressed to look like Josh's psycho character from the game, for literally no explanation given, and the Wendigos from the game, except instead of the Wendigos being from an old Native American curse, they're just here because past people who got trapped in this loop were transformed into the Wendigos. Sadly, they don't move or look nearly as threatening as the Wendigos in the game, behaving more just like regular zombies. The film also stars Peter Stormare as the same character Dr. Hill, and at one point alludes to the game and the film taking place in the same universe. Just as this mystery starts to go somewhere, Dr. Hill is simply killed off in such a hilarious fashion that it just pulled me right out of the film's atmosphere. It's a spoiler, but I'm just going to tell you anyway because the way that he dies is just bonkers. So the film establishes that water in this parallel world that they're trapped in is toxic, and drinking even just a drop will have you literally explode. So this Dr. Hill, who has had loads of people trapped here likely for years, he should be a master of this realm, right? Well, apparently not, as one of the protagonists just takes him out with ease by moving his cup of coffee underneath where water is dripping from the ceiling, and then he picks up the mug and continues to drink from it, and then boom. A setup with a splat for a landing. While on its own merits, Until Dawn is a pretty average horror film with some unique elements, I just didn't quite feel it lived up to the video game. I'm going to put Until Dawn in C tier, but ahead of Ratchet and Clank. So those are all the 6 currently released PlayStation movies ranked. Gran Turismo is in the lead, with Heavenly Sword right at the bottom. Whatever PlayStation Productions has for us next, I'll be there to cover it. What's your favourite PlayStation movie? Let me know in the comments below. And also, would you like to see me do the same for PlayStation's TV series? Well, let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care.